Hello friends! If you caught the last two episodes, then you know I said I was managing my expectations for this movie. When it was announced, I was beyond excited, then I saw the trailers and I was a little concerned because it seemed like it was going to be more geared toward kids. On top of that, in the episode where I shared my thoughts on last year's Transformers Rise of the Beasts, I said I was hoping that Transformers 1 would be done in a live action style with more realistic CGI that we've been getting since '08. I won't skirt around the fact that I said what I said, and you know me, I will admit when I'm wrong. We reflect, we learn, we grow. That said, all of the Transformers movies moving forward should be animated, period. Hey there movie lovers, welcome back. It's your movie buddy here, ready to talk about the latest movie I watched. Whether you're a longtime subscriber or follower, or you're here with me for the first time, I am thrilled to have you here. If you're looking for detailed plot breakdowns, you won't find them here. But stick around for my spoiler-free thoughts and honest opinions on the latest film I watched in theaters. I always try my best to be spoiler-free in my episodes, and I generally don't give my thoughts away quite early in the episode, but I have to say, if you are completely unfamiliar with the Transformers story, I would highly recommend you go into this movie knowing as little as possible. Story moments and character arcs will be incredibly more impactful if you have no idea who is who and their stories before watching this movie. There are general details and characters I will be talking about in this episode. If you're a fan of the franchise, I will not be saying anything new. And if you've watched the trailers, I won't be getting into anything that wasn't already shown. But just in case you haven't seen the trailers, or you just haven't seen them in a while, or you forgot what happened in them, then consider this a light spoiler warning. If you're here with me on YouTube, you can find timestamps in the video description to jump straight to the sections that you're most interested in. New reviews drop every Friday, so grab your popcorn, hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, and let's get into today's episode on Transformers 1. In the early days of Cybertron, before they became the sworn enemies that we're familiar with, Optimus Prime and Megatron were once bonded like brothers known as Orion Pax and D16. As miners working deep within Cybertron to extract Energon, their journey will not only change them, but also the fate of Cybertron forever. As always, I want to get into the themes of the film, or at least my take on it. There are some heavy ideas here: the ruling class and the working class, how passivity can dissolve into retribution when someone gains power, the timeless conflict of good standing against evil, but at the end of the day, this is a movie about two brothers and what ultimately tears them apart. If you've been hanging out with me for a while, then you probably know that I love the sibling bond in media, so of course, we've got to talk about it. I do want to make a note that Orion Pax and D16 are not actually brothers, but they are close friends that are as close as brothers. Transformers 1 does an incredible job of showing us the relationship between Orion Pax and D16. Their first moments and the journey that strengthens their bond, and how that same journey rips them apart. Unless you've ventured out of the Michael Bay Transformers movies, then Megatron absolutely seems like a one-dimensional bad dude, right? With hints of maybe more that we don't quite see. Transformers 1, on the other hand, delivers a deep and layered character that you can't help but root for. Back when we talked about Dune Part 2, I said it's very much, you're going down a path I can't follow. And it hurts my heart so good. I love the tragedy of it all. I'm getting off topic here because I am having a great time. I've said it before, I don't get a lot of opportunity to talk about Transformers, but it's about how Orion Pax and D16 respond to truths and power, and I am obsessed. Now, this is where we talk about character development, and I'm going to gloss over this section because I don't want to give too much away. We know by this point who's who, but I still want to avoid getting into specific plot details. What I will say is both Orion Pax and D16 have unsurprisingly incredible character development. Orion Pax maintains his sense of hope and compassion throughout, all the while he's dragging D16 around for all of his shenanigans. In the end, that sense of hope and compassion grow with his importance to Cybertron and his fellow Cybertronians. On the other hand, D16's development is just as compelling, and I might even say, I will definitely say, more compelling. I love where he starts, his strong belief in doing what's right, following the rules really. Keep your head down and work your way up within the system. This sense of what's right and the rules that govern are shattered, and his descent is incredibly impactful, especially seeing how it impacts his character and his relationship with Orion. The groundwork laid for both characters is extremely effective, and it makes you wonder how they become the enemies we're so familiar with. The fractures in both Orion and D16 and their relationship feels insanely organic to the story and to the characters. It doesn't feel forced. You can see how their development progresses in every scene and every line of dialogue, culminating into an intense and impactful third act. Earlier, I mentioned how last year I wanted the animation style to lean more toward live action, similar to the opening of 2018's Bumblebee movie, with its incredible detail and realism. Well, I was wrong. I mean, that would have been neat. I still think it would have been really cool, but visually, Transformers 1 is incredible. It's very G1, and I absolutely love that. If you're unfamiliar, the term Generation 1 or G1 covers both the animated television series The Transformers and the comic book series of the same name, which are further divided into spin-offs. The animated series originally aired from 1984 to 1987. G1 is where we get the big-bodied blocky bots from. It's honestly before my time, but there's something about those unmistakable G1 designs that hits a nostalgic nerve. I'm ranting a bit, but Transformers 1 beautifully takes that iconic look and modernizes it. The more recent Transformers War for Cybertron trilogy on Netflix really hits the G1 design style right on the nose, while also being dark and gritty. Transformers 1, on the other hand, definitely slims down the characters and doesn't make them as big-bodied, blocky bots, but it maintains the vibes of the G1 style while being bright and kid-friendly. I got caught up talking about the look of the bots because I love the look so much, but the visual brilliance of Transformers 1 goes beyond just the character designs. This movie looks incredible. The overall cinematography is gorgeous. The lighting was what immediately caught my attention. The movie opens with Pax in a darkened area, and then when a bright light hits, that's when I was like, oh, this movie is going to look stunning. The dynamic camera angles, the depth and focus, as well as the textures, all bring this movie to life in a way that's just a feast for the eyes. Now, let's talk about the voice acting in this movie. There is something to be said about letting voice actors do this kind of work, but I think overall, the entire cast does a really good job. Lawrence Fishburne as Alpha Trion is fantastic. He brings a commanding presence to the role, and there's a wisdom in his voice that translates perfectly through the character. Scarlett Johansson as Ielita 1 is solid. She's such a strong, smart, and independent character. Scarlett's voice work captures both Ielita's strengths and her emotions. Steve Buscemi as Starscream is actually incredibly brilliant. He nails Starscream's flaws and his strengths as a character. Okay, mostly his flaws, from the chest-puffing false bravado to the self-preserving character that we know him to be, all while still giving us those glimpses of his cunning and ambition. It's a spot-on performance. We have to talk about Chris Hemsworth as Orion Pax. He's fine. I do like Hemsworth as an actor, but as OP? To be honest, part of me really just wanted to hear the OG Peter Cullen again, and interestingly enough, toward the end of the movie, there were some moments where Hemsworth actually kind of sounded like Cullen. If you know, you know, but if you don't, Peter Cullen is the original voice actor for Optimus Prime. We are on a complete sidebar right now, but I totally get why he doesn't voice Orion Pax. Let's be real, he's basically an entirely different character. He's younger and more reckless and far from the seasoned Autobot leader that we know. I get it, but still, I think if you're not familiar with OP's original voice actor, then this change won't be so in your face. He definitely sounds like Chris Hemsworth. He's not doing anything with his voice aside from changing his accent, but he did bring across Orion's hopefulness and reckless ambition to prove himself to the world. Brian Tyree Henry as D16 is absolutely fantastic. I really like what he brought to the role. He effectively communicated every stage of D16's character development. He excels in the warmth and the true bond D16 shares with Pax. Further into the story, Brian Tyree Henry brings that confusion and conflict, as well as pain and betrayal to the surface. He nails every emotional beat. Now let's get into the pacing, storytelling, and overall structure. In my opinion, they really knocked it out of the park. I think it's easy to say it dragged in the beginning, but that setup is crucial for building the story and establishing the characters. Additionally, we get to see the relationship between Pax and D16 up close, how they see each other, how they support each other no matter what, and their deep bond. I think the pacing overall is solid. The story isn't groundbreaking. We've seen the friends turned enemies plot before, but the execution here is great. Even though I've known their story for decades, I still felt the twisting knife of betrayal. And when they finally stood on opposite sides, oh my gosh, you guys, my heart. I love their story so much. I know Optimus and Megatron's story vary depending on where you look. I'm used to the data clerk, archivist, librarian, and the gladiator. The backstory they went with in this movie isn't one I'm as familiar with, but I think it worked incredibly well with the narrative. Moving on to the comparison section, I have to say, I did not rewatch all the Transformers movies, and that's because not only are the live-action films burned into my memory, but this is a standalone film. You do not need to have seen anything else before watching Transformers 1. This movie is extremely accessible to new audiences. That said, if you're more familiar with the Bay movies, you'll be missing out on the cars, lots of amazing cars, trucks, and jets. That's one of the highlights for me personally, along with the majority of the character designs and intricate detail. I'm gonna start rambling again, but Transformers 1 takes place entirely on Cybertron, so there are no humans to, in my opinion, distract from the Transformers, and this is something I have been waiting for years. I was going to start talking about video games, TV shows, and comics, but we really don't have that kind of time. I just want to say that it's important to know that the TV shows, comics, and video games all have more time to tell a bigger story and give more time to different characters. We only have what we got from Transformers 1 with the time they had, but I absolutely look forward to where they take this story. Somehow I still ended up rambling. My point is, focusing just on the films, excluding the animated 1986 film because it has been a very, very long time since I've seen that one. If you're expecting more of what the live action films deliver, then you might be disappointed. If you're expecting what you know the franchise can deliver, especially if you're a fan of the lore, then you'll probably be just as excited as I am. Now, let's wrap up with my final thoughts on the movie. After discussing some key elements, the real question remains, is it worth your time? If you can't tell where I stand by now, yes, this movie is absolutely worth your time. This movie got me excited about Transformers again. I've always loved the franchise, and the live action films do have a special place in my heart, but after my honey and I left the theater, I just wanted to reread some of my favorite comic arcs and rewatch some of the TV shows. Maybe I'll watch Beast Wars again for the billionth time. I'm rambling, but as a fan who already knows the characters, the lore, and where the story was headed, this is still an incredibly good movie. My honey and I went as two adults, and clearly I had a blast. And my honey, who isn't as into the franchise as I am, also had a really good time. And the person sitting on the other side of me in the theater was a guy by himself. My point is, we didn't have kids with us. Now, were there plenty of kids in the audience that seemed like they were having the time of their life? Yes. But this isn't the basic kids movie that I thought it was going to be. Transformers 1 is an incredible Transformers movie, and even if you're not really into the franchise, it's still an incredible movie. Of course, every movie has its pros and cons, and naturally, people like what they like. We're going to get into some criticisms of the movie, and I'll share my thoughts. This time around, because I saw an early screening, there just aren't a ton of reviews out there for me to use for this section. I did find one negative that stood out to me. Most of them were kind of surface level comments, so I just decided to stick with the one, and then we'll get into my own. Starting with the one online that I found, this person said, "This origin story has appealing visuals and action, but the plot might be too confusing for viewers who are new to the franchise." I was very, very surprised by this comment. I think this movie is put together so well in terms of balancing the appeal to children. It's colorful, and we know, good robot, bad robot, right? But for adults and older fans, it's extremely easy to put together. Again, my honey isn't a super fan, but he was still able to pick out the bad guys, and he understood what was going on. I do think the movie might leave viewers who are new to the franchise with more questions once the credits roll. We spent part of the car ride home talking about Primus, Unicron, and The One. Elements that the movie doesn't cover, but could spark curiosity. That said, none of the questions I answered or the conversation had to do with clearing up or explaining the plot. Moving on to my own thoughts, and I will admit this is more of a personal complaint than an actual critique. I did not like B at all. He's one of my favorite Autobots, but in this movie, he was beyond obnoxious. Like I mentioned earlier, other media like the TV shows and comics have more time to flesh out characters, and B needed more time to be a more well-rounded character. I've seen an annoying B. I watched the hell out of the 2007's Transformers animated series, but the character had more time, depth, and again, was a more well-rounded character. In this movie, B is definitely funny. I laughed plenty of times, but sometimes it was just too much. He had some moments that showed a hint of more depth, but not enough, in my opinion, to balance the character out. I get that he's for the children, which totally makes sense, but this take on the character just didn't work for me. I am looking forward to seeing the character develop though, assuming they make more of these movies. Do you plan on watching Transformers 1? If not, what's holding you back? Is it not your cup of tea, not your usual genre? Do you not like animated movies? Are you, like me, worried that it's geared more toward children? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts after today's episode. In conclusion, this movie is amazing. It breathes new life into the franchise in a colorful, exciting way while also staying grounded in a way that I think seasoned fans can really appreciate. I never felt that this movie dragged, and even in quieter moments, I was either in awe of the art that this movie is, or I was scanning the crowd for Transformers looking for ones that I recognize, and there are so many. I've been saying, I was worried this movie was going to be too kid-focused and not appeal to a wider audience, and I want to emphasize this because I could not have been more wrong. Having been that person and also having seen the movie, I would say that I think people would be making a big mistake to assume that this is a kid's movie and not give it a chance. Let's be real, it's Transformers. It started out as a line of action figures, then an animated series in the 80s. It's always going to have those elements that are for the children, but it also brings elements for adults. Some of the comics and the TV shows are pretty intense. And Transformers 1 strikes a pretty good balance between bright colors and cool robots and heavy themes and complex ideas. Transformers 1 is a movie for the whole family, or just the adults who are looking for something new to watch. You don't have to be a lore expert to watch this movie or even enjoy this movie, because it's just a great film with a solid storyline and fantastic character development. But if you're a fan of the franchise, there's a lot of references and a lot of characters in the background to pick out. Honestly, I wasn't expecting so many subtle nods, and they didn't feel heavy-handed. Well, maybe the more than meets the eye bit, but overall, the Easter eggs were a blast to see. I want to talk about the animation again, and it's something I said to my honey once the credits started rolling. These movies should have been animated so much sooner. There is a lot that has been done and can be done with CGI. Did I love seeing the Maximals in live action in full, gloriously detailed CGI? Yes, and it's okay to love both. With animation, there truly is no limit, and that's what this franchise deserves. Plus, I think it's about time they tried something new with the franchise, and I'm really excited to see where they take the story. I don't want to ramble when we're so close to the end of the episode, but there's so much that's going to happen next, and so many more characters they can introduce. What I'm trying to say is there's a lot to get excited about. All right, you guys, before we wrap up, I want to talk about what movie I'll be sharing my thoughts on next. I am not going to the movie theater this weekend, so I posted a poll to the community tab asking you guys to pick which movie I should watch next. I tried to go for a variety of movies that are on my watch list, so I picked The Watchers, Inside Out 2, Twisters, and The Crow. Check the poll out if you guys want to vote, and whichever movie has the highest number of votes this weekend, I will be watching, and I will share my thoughts on the podcast next week, so be sure to follow that on Spotify for the podcast exclusive episodes. The next movie I have tickets for to see in theaters is The Wild Robot, which I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I did not plan on watching, but I saw a trailer recently that said it's the greatest DreamWorks movie ever. Oh, word? Because DreamWorks also made the animated masterpieces How to Train Your Dragon and Kung Fu Panda. So that is a very big claim, and I'm not gonna lie, it totally worked on me. I got. I saw that quote in the trailer and I immediately opened the Cinemark app on my phone and I bought tickets. The last movie I have tickets for is Joker Folie à Deux, and I'm not looking at early reviews. I do my best to avoid reviews, but there's some buzz about the changes to Harley's character, so I'm interested to see what they did. I also really love musicals, which I know is something that people took issue with. I don't mind that at all, so we'll see about that one in October. Anyway, if there's a movie that you are excited about and you want me to talk about, let me know in the comments below or send me a message on Instagram at a.rocket.review. Your suggestions are always welcome and I love hearing from you guys. But for now, a huge thank you to everyone who has stuck around with me to the end of the video. Last week, I shared my thoughts on Trap and Alien Romulus. If you haven't checked out those episodes yet, they are just a click away. And I know you're wondering, what happened to Beetlejuice? Well, I posted my thoughts on that episode today as well. If you're watching today's episode on YouTube, you can find the link to all those episodes in the top right corner. And for my podcast listeners, all those episodes are available for you as well. Your feedback is always appreciated, so please share your thoughts on YouTube in the comment section below. And if you're listening on the Spotify app, they added a comment section, so let me know what you're thinking. Do you plan on watching this one? Have you seen it yet? Do you agree with my take or do you have a different opinion? Do you think Transformers 1 is the best Transformers movie? Honestly, I think so. I mean, I really love the Bumblebee movie and Transformers Dark of the Moon is my favorite Bay movie, but this movie is actually like really, really good. Which movie is your favorite? Who is your favorite Transformer? I was shocked that I came out of this movie with D16 being my favorite character. I've never been a Megatron girly, to be honest, so I was very surprised. Jazz and Soundwave are my favorites. I could list more, but I won't. Let's get the conversation going. Let me know your favorites. If you are enjoying the content, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an update. For those who prefer on-the-go listening, follow me on Spotify so you don't miss out on our podcast exclusive episodes. And hey, if you're on Instagram, follow me at a.rocket.review for sneak peeks and behind-the-scenes content. And honestly, that's just me going to the movie theater and watching movies at home. Feel free to hop into my DMs with movie suggestions or just to chat about films. Your support honestly means so much to me, and your engagement helps our community grow. Whether it's on YouTube, the podcast, or on Instagram, your presence is greatly appreciated. So until next time, spread positivity, be safe, take care of yourself, and happy movie watching. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.